Welcome to Scaling with People, your weekly playbook for turning chaos into compounding growth. Each week, we go under the hood with battle-tested experts in all areas of business, from marketing to sales, operation, finance, and people, plus product and leadership, to unpack the plays, numbers, and systems that turn chaos into compounding growth. Learn straight from founders and experts who've done it and continue to do it successfully. There's zero fluff, just moves that you can steal immediately. This podcast is brought to you by Guide to HR, human expertise, AI-powered impact.
Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and CEO and founder to Guide to HR. You didn't start a company to become its bottleneck, but somewhere along the way, the business you built started running you. On today's episode, we're joined with Rajesh Nagjee, who is a CEO mentor who's calling the real reason founders hit a wall. Your systems evolved, but your leadership operating systems didn't. We're diving into the velocity crisis, how to delegate ownership instead of task, and the decision frameworks that let you scale without everything running through you. If you're still driving your company like a sedan when it's built like a Ferrari, this one's going to hit. Well, thank you, Rajesh, for joining us today. Before we get started, tell the audience a little bit more about you.
Hey, Gwen, thank you for inviting me on your amazing podcast. So I've been a serial entrepreneur. I started out in my family business, which was established in 1880 by my grandfather.
Wow.
And, we've been at it for so many years. I worked there for 12 years, and then I decided to take a sabbatical, a very long sabbatical to pursue music. And I trained to become a professional Indian classical musician. I played the sitar.
Wow.
And then I got inspired to build a hospital. And so I built and ran a hospital for another 12 years. It was during that period that I recognized and realized that I had this amazing talent to coach. So then I spent hours and hours, and I did the math, it's 80,000 hours to master 14 different disciplines on how to apply physics to business. And, having been an entrepreneur myself, done every mistake in the book, hit my head on the wall so many times, almost went bankrupt so many times. I know that part. And so I started working on how can I help business owners and founders to kind of accelerate their business. So that's basically how, I am here and got invited on this podcast.
A lot of lessons learned there, and my audience knows I love to put my founders and business owners on the hot seat. So would you mind sharing a lesson learned? I mean, you talked about bankruptcy and all these things. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self, don't do this or do this instead or pivot here, could you share one of those stories with us today?
I'll say a very simple frame. And the frame is that every single business I started, and I've been a serial entrepreneur, I've done many businesses, I've always thought of how this business can make me rich, make me famous, and make me very, very important and powerful. So it was all about me, and everything, went up very well. It was short-lived, and it would crash. Somewhere along the line, I started realizing that there's an entity, a stakeholder called a customer, and if I'm not going to serve the customer, I'm not going to get where I want to go. So the law is very simple. If you can help the people that you serve get what they want, then they will help you get what you want. So the whole flip that happened was, instead of looking at how can I profit, I started looking at how can my customers profit. And then I stopped looking for profitable customers and started looking for profiting customers. And that was the whole shift. And, work then started becoming very, very easy. So that is the first frame, the shift that happened for me became absolutely customer focused. The second thing is I found that pressure and productivity don't work well together. So Tim Galway has done a lot of work on the inner game of sports and golf and tennis and in business. And he's got this beautiful equation that performance is equal to potential minus interference. So I started looking at what's the interference that used to bother me and bothers everybody. And one of the biggest is stress, sleepless nights, and all the rest of it. So, where does it all come from? And what is it that is the one common phenomena for every single business owner? And that happens to be the goals that we set. And the goals that we set then become, you know, the pressure points, which then creates so much of stress. Of course, there are bills to be paid. Of course, we've got to meet our costs. But between that and our ambition, that big gap, big, hairy, audacious goals that people set, I mean, are they living in reality? Do you have the processes, the people, the structures, the capacity? And when there is a loading mismatch between capacity and the goals and the load that you take on, then there's going to be all kinds of issues. And then the stress and the interference starts, fear, doubt, anxiety. So once that starts loading, the potential starts going down and the performance starts going down. So I've done a lot of experiments in goal setting, and what I really find very, very useful, very simple, is to set goals which are 3 years out, not 1 year out. When you set goals which are 3 years out, you have 12 quarters to play with. So even in one quarter you don't perform, it doesn't create as much stress as if you set an annual goal and 1 month you miss or one quarter you miss, the stress just goes through the roof. So
That
at
makes
the
a
end of
lot of
every
sense.
year, if at the end of every year, if you reset to another 3 years, you always have 12 quarters that comes down to 8 quarters and then again tops up to 12 quarters. Because at the end of the day, business is not meant for just a year. It's meant to last for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, and so on. So
Yeah.
these are the little things, once people start thinking about them, instead of just following the same route. And then, do you really need to set a goal? When I ask that question, everybody says, "What do you mean? If I don't set goals, I won't perform." I said, "Just think about it." And so I operate for the last, I don't know how many years, I don't set goals.
I love both those. One, the first one really to me hit ego, right? Our egos, especially as founders, entrepreneurs, we're building something that's like ours, it's our baby, this we're so proud of it, but there's a lot of ego tied to it. And I've actually been on this journey myself where the last like 8 or so months I've been asking myself, am I making this decision for the business or because it will fill my ego and like stroke my ego? And man, that mind frame has really set how I've been answering those questions and what I've been doing for the business so drastically. And I never thought I don't feel like I'm a pretty ego, like I don't feel like I have a high ego or like that's my, I don't, not a monster of mine, but I did realize I was making some business decisions around, will this make me look good or will this help like build my own like, name and brand out there instead of the Guide to HR brand. So I appreciate that vulnerability and I so connect with it a lot. So, and the second one is so interesting because the goals, yeah, you're right. I've been taught, and as an HR professional, I implement goals, objectives, OKRs into an organization. And when I first built this business, I set a goal for myself to get so many clients by the end of the year, and I met the goal. The problem was, is I forced a round hole in a square peg. And man, I really wish looking back, I did not accept that last client. There were plenty of red flags for me to not accept that last client. But because I had this goal, I was like, I got to get that client. I'm going to sign that client. And then the first quarter of the next year, I was in just kind of HELL because I should never have accepted that client. And so sometimes the goals can drive you to make decisions that are not appropriate for you, your business, long term, short term, because you feel like you got to meet that goal. So that's an interesting perspective of like goals. Like I feel like keep people on target, on the right path, but can also deviate you because you're just trying to check that box off. I met that goal. So man, I appreciate both of those. I resonate with both of them completely. So as we get into today's topic, we talk about velocity crisis, and you say most founders hit it at some point in time. What's the moment where a founder realizes they're a bottleneck and not the solution anymore? What have you seen being that kind of like aha moment for them? And maybe like, let me ask another side question to that, which is, if a founder hasn't had that aha moment, what are some signs that they can look out for to make sure they never become that bottleneck?
Signs are very easy to spot, and if you can't spot them as a founder or as a as a promoter of your business, ask your family. They'll tell you. Are you spending quality time with them? Are you attending your children's games and piano and whatever else that they're doing? Do you schedule holidays and are able to take them, or do you cancel them? Do you have sleepless nights? They'll tell you straight away. The evidence is all over the place. And why is it that, every single founder, when I say every single founder, I'm talking about 95%, which is a very, very big number, always, get into this founder's trap. So the founder's trap has got a lot to do with, you start a business, it's successful, then you want to scale up, you want to grow, you hire a bunch of people, you train them, you get going, and then you realize that you're still the chief problem solver. And, so I realized this in my hospital, the one that I created, is that, I hired very smart people, and 2 minutes later, they hired me right back. So they hired me as the chief problem solver. They kept running to me. I felt great as to sit till past midnight every single night solving all the problems. And then I realized that, this is not a sustainable model. And then I worked on it and made sure that they took the decisions, came to me with, this is the problem. These are the two different possible solutions. This is the one that we think will work out, and these are our assumptions. And then it was easy for me to stop deciding and solving problems to start choosing between what they were presenting to me. So it was a graduation for everybody. So this is, these are the signs. If you're doing too much, if you're the chief problem solver, I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, you can't do everything all the time and have a scalable business. And it's such a key manager leadership moment, right? Because a lot of things I totally resonate with that again, because when I'm working with managers at any level, managers, leaders at any level, it's really how do you help grow your people? And when someone comes to you with a problem, instead of giving them the solution, working with them to help them come up with the solution, right? And that really grows them. So a lot of times I'll share you're blocking your people's growth and opportunity to help you scale the business because you're answering the question and instead positive like, well, what do you suggest? What do you recommend? How are you going to get this done? And then if they get stuck, then you can brainstorm with them. But giving them that moment to really grow and shine is a key. I think that's what really great leadership looks like. So, how can a founder tell the difference between being needed versus being in the way?
There's nothing to tell. They are in the way. Period.
Period. End of story. Drop the mic.
I mean, come on. They are in the way because they haven't figured out how to scale up a business through their people. And it all starts with delegation. And delegation, just because you hand off things to people to do, that's not delegation. There are layers of delegation, levels of delegation. And I've noticed that most founders are at level 1 or level 2. Level 5 founders are the ones that are ready to scale their businesses and become serial entrepreneurs. So what's the difference between level 1 and level 5? Level 1 delegation is when you delegate projects, tasks with a scope. And every single person, nods, yes, of course, these are projects that are delegated, of course there are tasks, and of course there's a scope. If you don't have all of that, they'll go all over the place. But the moment you do that, you convert your leadership team into vendors. Because when you work with vendors, that's what you're doing. It's a project based, it's task and scope, and all the good other good stuff of the pricing and all that. But this is the essence of it. So if you are delegating projects, tasks, and putting a scope around, You converted your team into vendors. To scale up, you need partners. You do not delegate projects, tasks, and scope to partners. What you delegate are outcomes. And with that is the freedom to take decisions. So they have agency. So outcome driven delegation completely transforms how people show up. Of course, you got to create the guardrails, you got to create the swim lanes, all the rest of it. But there's something called fixed outcome and variable process of fixed process and variable outcome. Now, most people are pursuing fixed process and then they wonder how come the outcomes are all over the place. But if it is fixed outcome and you give people freedom with all the process and recipes and everything, thought through well, it's not about just throwing an outcome and say, hey, go figure it out. It's actually working with them to enable them, to train them, to make sure that they really get what is the outcome, what are the standards at which we are playing, what are the conditions of satisfaction. So once all of that is aligned powerfully, and then you get out of the way, and people will get the job done.
Yeah, I see that so much. And I guess my question to you is I've seen a couple founders that are able to do that, and then, maybe they didn't put enough guardrails in place or didn't support the person, maybe even hired the wrong person. So what would you say to a founder who said, I've done that and I got burned and now I'm gun shy to do it again? How can you help them get over that fear, and give a different person another opportunity to show that that is the right way to run your business?
We can't get anybody to give up any fear. They got to, it's like I learned how to cycle the hard way. I, probably spent 20 days. My brother got it right in 3 days. I kept falling off, hurting myself, but I didn't declare that I was a failure. I got back on.
Yeah.
So it's really about, I could have said, been there, done that, doesn't work for me, end of story. So it's really, that potential within you when you recognize it and say, okay, it's like trying to open a safe. There's a certain combination, the right numbers in the right order, and it starts to work. So it's either you know how to get that done or you don't know how to get that done. It's a competency issue. It's not a capability issue. And people do not have the distinction between what is capability and what's competence. So when a student gets promoted from the seventh grade to the eighth grade, they got promoted because they were capable and competent to write the seventh grade exams. But the moment they get promoted to the eighth grade, they're still capable, but they're not competent to write the eighth grade exams till they build the competence in the year. So competence is learned. And every promotion lands you into incompetence. So a founder that's growing, he's hired a team, that's a promotion.
Yeah.
The moment they got promoted, the competence that is required for that next grade, if they're operating from the lower grade, that's what is coming in the way. So how do you recognize that you are incompetent? Is by declaring you are incompetent. Like every single quarter, I declare I'm incompetent father to my son. That's my son there. He's now 26. I'm an
Oh,
incompetent husband to my wife. I'm an incompetent friend to myself and an incompetent coach every single quarter. Then I start searching for the evidence and I find the evidence. Then I start figuring out, okay, how am I going to build that competence? So I end up getting 4 promotions every single year in the 4 areas of my life that really matter to me. People are lucky if they get 1 promotion in 3 years or 4
yeah.
years or 5 years. So promotion and incompetence goes together. So people who have sleepless nights, they've got all that stuff. it's exactly the same metaphor. They're trying to build a Ferrari. They've built a Ferrari, but they're licensed to operate a sedan. And you cannot drive a Ferrari down a steep mountain at 200 miles per hour or kilometers per hour, whichever. And it's a beast. That machine is a beast. You
Yeah.
got to get licensed to do that. So that's basically what it is. So if you ask me, the one word is competence and the other word is delegation. These are the two words that people really need to get. And if they're not good at something, people mess it up and then they say, you know what, I don't have the capability. My friend, you have the capability. You got to build the competence.
That's such a great distinction too. And I would say a lot of times I see leaders at all levels promoting someone and then expecting them to overnight work at that level. But like you said, like you get promoted into the eighth grade, it takes another year before you actually can take that eighth grade exam and pass it. And I think a lot of times leaders forget I've promoted you, but now I need to help grow you and your competency. You have the capabilities, but you got to grow that competency so you can work at that level and eventually get promoted again. And I think that's such a great call out too. I appreciate that. So thinking about this, like if a founder's listening to here and being like, oh, this resonates so much, what would be like a good first step or two that you would recommend a founder take in regards to switching them working, being the bottleneck and helping them delegate and also helping them get past that maybe fear or block to give people the opportunity to showcase that they can grow their competency because they are very capable.
I think the easiest first step is to look at goal setting and really get to what is goal setting, whether they do a 3-year goal or a 1-year goal. A goal just by putting a number or percentage out there is the starting point. Immediately after that, you got to do a learning goal and learning goal for your team, for yourself. And the learning is nothing but the new competencies that are required. So if you did 100 last year and you want to do 140 this year, well, the gap between 100 and 140 is where incompetence lives. So you want to promote your company from 100 to 140. What are the new competencies? So what are the learning goals? So if you start focusing on learning goals along for every goal, what's the learning goal? Every goal, what's the new competencies? For everybody, for yourself and for everybody else, then things really start growing. And this is such a simple thing. It's, everybody can do it. Like I want to, uh, get my music to the next level, and I see the gap from where I want to go. So immediately, what are my learning goals? What do I need to learn? Is it to work more with my left hand, with my right hand, or balance, or whatever? So I'm all the time constantly looking at my learning goals and working on them, because those learning goals are going to build the competencies to get me to the next level.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So, as we wrap up, I have one final question for you, which is, what do you see the cost of for businesses if the founder doesn't solve this, the founder doesn't actually start delegating and stepping out of the way and not being the bottleneck of the business? What do you see happening to companies where the founder never evolves?
I'll give you the statistics, very scary. 95% of businesses fail to grow.
Wow.
17% grow at a very incremental, small pace. And 48% hover around the break even point. 11% get into debt trap and 19% go bankrupt. That's 95% of businesses and founders. And it's such an easy fix.
Yeah.
You don't want to be part of the 95%, you want to be part of the 5%. So, what is it that you're doing that's trapping you here, that's making you the living dead? You don't have a life. You're not able to spend time, quality time with your family, with your loved ones. You're missing birthdays, you're missing parties, you're missing quality time with your parents. That's not why you started a business.
Yeah.
So you just think about what is it that you're doing that's leading to that. Einstein says doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, is insanity.
Yep.
And 95% of founders land in that trap. I mean, that's insanity, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. 100%. Well, I think that's a wake up call if you haven't heard one before. And if you feel like you're one of those founders, dear listeners, please take this moment and step outside of your day to day and really do some soul searching, right? And see how you can start changing how you're behaving and interacting with your team and give them the opportunity to step up and help scale your business. So again, think you will be a great person to interact with, but I know you have a freedom scorecard. Would you like to talk about that for our founders and CEOs out there?
I've been working with founders and CEOs for over 30 years. I have mentored and coached over 350 CEOs long term, between 3 to 5 years, worked with 40,000 CXOs. And what I really realize is that all businesses run on operating systems. So I've created an operating system. It's called the CEO Freedom Operating System, and it's got various different operating systems that come together to create that freedom, that most elusive thing that founders are seeking, which is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which is freedom. And so it starts with the client magnet operating system, a delegation operating system, and then it's about leadership operating system, and all of these they all dance and play together to simplify business. And what are we inviting people to do is to come out and play business. It's not
Yeah,
serious. You don't
I
have to
love
make
that.
it serious.
Yeah.
Vehicles, driving a car is so much more complex than running a business. Thank God they designed the cars to be foolproof and idiot proof. What what happens when you start a business? It's unnecessarily complicated. It's very simple. Find a customer, listen to them. What do they want? Make that happen, and things start to work. So once you align all of these things, and that's what the Freedom OS does, the CEO Freedom OS.
Awesome. Well,
And
thank you so much for sharing that. And we will put the link to that scorecard in the bottom of the description. Everybody should take it and see where they're at and how they can improve. So with that, I want to say thank you, Rajesh, for joining us today. So impactful. And I normally don't call out selling, working with anyone, but for the founders that are listening, if this really resonates with you, reach out to Rajesh. He's a great mentor and coach, and he can help you get past this and really grow your business. We'll put all the information in on how to connect with him. And any last final thoughts or tips you'd like to share today, Rajesh?
there's one big trap. The trap is that every time things don't work, people start looking at there's something wrong here, there's something wrong with me. And they get into that hole, which is a bottomless pit. So if you can switch that and say, hey, there's nothing wrong here and there's something I got to fix. It's like saying, if I'm driving out to meet you at 4 o'clock and I get a flat tire on the way, I get out of the car and I start kicking that tire and say, this isn't it, this can't be it, this is something wrong with me. This is it, and get on with life. There's nothing wrong here. I have a flat tire. Find ways to communicate, find alternate ways to get there, and pay for the coffee. So it's so simple.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great mindset. Appreciate that. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We look forward to having you on our next episode next week. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world when you're listening. Take care, everyone.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Scaling with People. If you got value from this conversation, do me a favor, share it with someone building something big. And hey, I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment, shoot me a message, or start a conversation. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the bold, unfiltered strategies we drop every week. I'm Guinevere Query, founder and CEO of Guide to HR, where we help high-growth companies scale smart with people-first strategies and AI-powered systems that don't just keep up, they lead. If you're building fast and want your HR to move faster, head to guidetohr.com and let's talk. And remember, scale isn't just about speed, it's about people. Until next time, have a great one.